If you want Colts talk all year long, you're in the right place.
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown. He's going to fire upfield. It's broken up. Tipped and intercepted by the Colts.
This is the official Colts Podcast, giving you an updated look at what's new with the Horseshoes.
Colts have it. Interception. 2 seconds left, and the Colts are going to win.
In the Indiana Union Construction Industry radio studio, let's get the podcast started.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the official Colts Podcast here on the Colts Audio Network and on the Colts YouTube channel. I'm JJ Stankevitz, joined by Larra Overton, and our special guest for the whole podcast today, it's Coach Rick Venturi. Rick, we wanted to bring you on because you have a very close connection to the two of the, I shouldn't even say the two because Pete Carroll is no longer in his position, but two of the head coaches who are no longer in the places that they've been in for a very long time and won at for a very long time, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban. Just for people who maybe don't know, give us the background, how you know them, what team you were with, and what your position was working with those two guys.
Well, I'll go all the way back.
Let's go all the way back.
My first meeting with Belichick was through a conduit, a guy named Ernie Adams, who was his right-hand man forever, who had worked with me at Northwestern back in college, okay? And this was the It was the 1981 season, and they invited me down to, they were playing the then St. Louis Cardinals. Bill was with the Giants, and so I went down and spent an afternoon with them, and that's where I met Bill for the first time. And then years after that, we were coaching the 34 in Indianapolis. He was in the 34 of the Giants. And so like at Mobile or at the Combine, and in those days you had more free time, we would get together and actually seminar on what we were doing in the 30, the problems we were having, what we would see.
And the 34, you're talking about a three-down defensive line, 3-4 defense.
3-4 defense, okay. What did I say, 34?
You said 34, but that's okay.
3-4 defense, okay.
Yeah.
Then in 1993, I was with the Colts with Marchibroda, and we played in the Senior Bowl against Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, and the Cleveland Browns staff. After the game, we flew back to Atlanta together, and then we parted, and I sat next to Nick Saban. Okay, just ironically, our seats were next to one another, and we both struck up a neat conversation, and I really liked him. I really did like him. I was a little bit older than those guys, but I really liked him. And then we went our separate ways. And then when it went down for me in Indy after the 93 season, Bill wanted to bring somebody in that would relieve Nick of coaching the defensive backs in the secondary and let him just walk around coordinator. Wasn't as So
Belichick was the head coach. Saban was the defensive coordinator.
Coach. Bill Belichick, Nick Saban was the defensive coordinator. They had 3 straight losing seasons, so they were a little bit in the corner, and Bill wanted to make some changes. He brought me in. I was a little bit more experienced. I'll give you that story. But Nick was a defensive coordinator, so I went up for the interview, and an interview with Bill was crazy. I mean, it was 2 days. They put me in a room by myself and gave me a project. I remember the project like yesterday. They had Stephon Moore and Eric Turner, and they wanted to know, should we play them strong or free? So they gave me all the tape. Go look at the tape and then give me a report. This was part of the interview. And then that particular night, though, we had a big banquet downtown Cleveland. It was a big Browns banquet. It just ironically happened to be that night. And I rode down with Nick and Miss Terry. She was just Terry then. They all became Miss Terry and Miss Sherry when we lived in Louisiana. Okay, that's what changed that. But anyway, and we bonded. The three of us just bonded. Chemistry-wise was great. So, but I hadn't coached the secondary in the pro ranks. I had been a defensive coordinator and coached linebackers. I hadn't coached secondary. So Nick had a little concern. Bill didn't, but Nick had a little concern about that.
Don't you feel like if Bill's not concerned, that should maybe be enough?
That's right, yeah. So we get together and we talk a lot of football. And we had done a lot here with the nickel because we had to play against the Buffalo Bills in the K-Gun, with Kelly and that crew. And they knew it was coming, and they liked my ideas on that. But Nick was a little bit nervous. So Nick said, Rick, you haven't coached the secondary. I'm a little bit nervous. And so I remember saying to him, listen, if you will do this for me, if you will come in every Saturday in this off season and you clinic me how you coach it from A to Z, I will learn it. I will coach it as you do with my own personality. Now, in the meantime, Belichick had told me, he put me on the plane. It was like 11 o'clock at night back to Indy. And he said to me, Rick, I don't care what you think about cover 1, cover 2, cover 3. I'm bringing you in here to get Eric Turner to play. Eric Turner had been the third pick in the draft, and he just wasn't quite playing up to snuff yet. And so that was my task. He did end up being AFC Player of the Year that year. So I'll take a little arrogant bow for that one.
Sure, you can take a bow.
It was like, 9
brag.
interceptions, 104 tackles, and 6 sacks. Not bad. But so anyway, so we did that. Now, I went home. I didn't have a job offer. He never talked money. This is Belichick. That's the way he is. Never talked anything. I go home to Indy thinking, well, and I got an offer on the table from the Bengals, so I'm probably going to take it. And I think it wasn't the next night, it was the night after that. I get a call from Saban like 11 o'clock at night. And he says, you got to be up here for a personnel meeting tomorrow at 8. And I'm going like, now wait, does that mean I have a job with the Browns? And he said, just be here at 8. I had to get like there was like a 5:30 flight out of Indy to Cleveland. No, really. And that was my first day on the job with the Cleveland Browns. And then, we had a historic year. It's actually, people forget this now because of their success. I always call them, I always say I'm BI before they were icons, okay? Mm-hmm. And we went on to 11-5 season, won our first wild card game in '94, and that was really the first winning season that Bill Belichick ever really had. Mm-hmm. And then Nick went from there to be the head coach at Michigan State, but I guess the thing that I could say, and you guys have heard me, I know Larra has heard me say this, it was the most productive football year of my life and most influential year of my life. It was probably the hardest year of my life, but I think the influence that those two guys had on me in that one season when we were together probably influenced me more the rest of my coaching career. And even today, as I do a broadcast or an analyzation, or a podcast, their influence runs deep with me because I did recognize their greatness, I think, before everybody. I would sit in those meetings and I would sit in between them. I think my claim to fame there is I sat in between those guys for 18 weeks in game planning. And think about that. That's maybe arguably the best pro coach of all times and the best college coach of all times. And we're all kind of equal back then. We all had input into the game plan. So, it was, like I said, it was a very hard year because, with Bill, there was no stone left unturned. And so you ended up, when you're like that, the hours just mount up. And we did tremendous amount of hours, but it was tremendous. It was like a think tank. It was just great football. And, both of them.
The Mensa of the NFL right there.
Oh, no, really? If I tell you who was on that staff, we have 5 interns on our 84, 85 staff. 3 of them became general managers, and 2 of them became head coaches. Eric Mangini's first job was my ball boy. You can ask him. That's his first job. And we had guys in that room, Kirk Ferentz.
Rick, correct me if I'm wrong. The other intern was Jim Schwartz?
Okay, the other 2, here's the 5 interns. Jimmy Schwartz and Eric Mangini, who became head coach, and Jimmy's still coaching. Eric's doing TV.
Jim Schwartz just coached one of the best defenses
And then you
in the
had
league.
Mike Tannenbaum, Phil Savage, and the kid that ended up being the Atlanta Falcons just till last year, general manager.
Thomas Dimitroff.
Those 5 guys were interns for us. They lived in a room together. I think Bill gave them like food. That was it.
Right.
And they worked around the clock. I knew it was going to be a tough job when they bring people in. I was getting a haircut at 11 o'clock at night in the building. Yeah. So, you knew that it was going to be something different, but just a great learning experience. And the interesting thing is both of those guys have similarities, but there are also some differences, okay? Similarities, they both believe in the same way of life when it comes to football. Now, what I mean by way of life is it's all or nothing. You are in it. There is nothing else that matters. Phil Savage wrote the book on Saban down at Alabama. It's one of the best books ever written on Saban. It's called 4th and Goal. And the symbolism of the 4th and Goal is every day you're there is 4th and Goal. There's no time that you relax until if you get a vacation, that's it. Every time you're in it, it's 100% commitment to excellence all the time. Both guys, really smart guys that could be successful outside of the football range. Very good, very highly intelligent people, football savants, both of them, technical wizards as well. And there's a difference. I always say a guy can know X's and O's, but can you teach it? Can you teach the A through Z? Whenever I interviewed a guy along my career for a position, I could always hear the buzzwords, but can you teach me? Can you teach me how to play? They both drive people beyond where they think they could go. They really do. They drive people beyond, and I think Saban had tremendous success in college because I think it's a little bit easier at the college level for that. And so, I think that was the similarities are really there. The differences, they're kind of funny in a way in that Bill is pretty much what you see. He's very methodical. Don't expect a lot of attaboys or, good job. He always used to say, do your job. That's, before it became a mantra. And I used to say, what he really means, guys, is do your job better than anybody else, or I'll get somebody that will. Yeah. It was, and Bill kept, it was healthy in a way, but he kept you very uncomfortable. You were always accountable. It didn't matter if it was June 1st or September 25th. You were just always accountable. Every time you walked in that building, you were a little bit on edge. Nick, on the other hand, was in those days highly volatile. He would explode. I've seen him slam the door, and that kind of stuff. Now, he really, as a head coach, he really grew. I saw it throughout the years. Now, I will say this for him. He would be very, very tough during the week on them and on everybody, but at game time, he was really calm. Both of them really calm at game time. Mm-hmm. The other thing is they're both very curious guys. And I really mean this. I think it's so important is they were always looking for a better way to do it. Even when the championships were there, even when, national championships, Super Bowls, can we do it better? They would bring guys in. They were always open. There was never this is the system, we got it now. It was never that way, ever and ever and ever. And then there was a difference, and it was great when we combined it. Mm-hmm. There was a difference in how they approached the X's and O's, believe this or not. Way of life, no difference. But in the X's and O's, Bill was one of those guys that, despite his brilliance, wanted the game plan package reduced. He wanted a very narrow game plan that took away what you did on offense and prevented you on defense from beating him. You hear that. I call it game specific. He would come in and, if he were playing the Colts, he would say, Freeney and Mathis are not going to beat us. Do you? And he'd call us a name. Do you guys understand this? And I don't want to have this discussion on Sunday. That was a warning, Right. So when, like when we would go in, like he would say to us, like, Nico Collins does not beat us. Do you get that? So when you went into your meeting room as a defensive staff, everything you would put up, every defense, every blitz, you accounted for Nico Collins. Mm-hmm. You never undressed Nico Collins. And his strength, and he would go to an extreme. When he played the Colts in the glory days, he would commit 5-on-3 in the back end on the passing game, play his outside backers wide on edge and dare you to run inside. Mm-hmm. And that's how he played the Colts all the time. Now, guys would look at that defense and say, you can't play that. You can't open that up. But he would go to an extreme to do it, and his brilliance was in that reduction, in that specific game plan. I asked him one day, I said, Bill, you're driving me crazy. I would do it one-on-one, of course. I would say, I'm nervous because I don't feel like I have enough. And he would always say, don't worry about it. We're going to take away what we're going to do best. We're not going to waste reps on things we're not going to use. And if they do something different, I'm going to pull it right out of the bag right there, and we're going to play it. Nick, on the other hand, is like the mad professor, okay? Nick, on the other hand, wants 5 calls for that situation. A lot of checks in the defense. You'll see it. I mean, if you ever watch Alabama play, there's a lot of checks, even at the college level. I think it really bothered him when the offenses evolved in college into those 95 plays, chaotic, no huddle
spread.
You know, I mean, he told me one day they're taking the damn coordinator out of the game, on defense. And so, there were selective differences, and the neat thing is we were able to put that together. But Belichick, it's just a matter of time until he takes another job. I mean, he's not for everybody. You can see it's not necessarily smooth talking with Atlanta, because to say he's set in his ways would say, you can cure cancer with mercurochrome. I mean, it's not. He is set in his ways, right. And I think Nick is done with coaching, but I still see something big for him down the road. I think with the chaos in college football, the NIL, the transfer portal. And I think eventually you're going to see a breaking away of the top football schools and more of an NFL model, regional revenue sharing. And they're going to need like a czar to run that. And what would be a more perfect guy than a guy that was not only a big winner, but also doesn't have skeletons. I mean, his kids graduate. Alabama's a first-class program. I mean, really. And so I see both of them. I have stayed in closer contact with Nick when he came to Baton Rouge to be the head coach at LSU. I was at New Orleans as defensive coordinator, so we got together and seminared all the time. And Miss Terry and Miss Sherry, always hit it off well. So we did a couple things socially, and then when he was at Alabama, actually after he won his first national championship. That was the year I was out of football, and John Gruden and I were together every day doing stuff down in Tampa. He found out we were together. He flew us both into Tuscaloosa, and we clinicked his staff. Believe this or not, this is after he won a world championship. Again, that's that curiosity part of it. So, it was a great experience. Like I said, I'm very prideful of the fact that, you sit in between two of the greatest of all times.
And I'm sure that they would say that about you. They would talk about how much you brought to them. I know how much I learned from you sitting next to you each and every day, and I know that how much respect there is at that level of coaching when you are among peers and all of that. And like Rick, just total coach to the core, comes in. He's got his notes. He's got everything outlined over there. I always joke, Coach, that like I don't watch reality television because the NFL is the greatest reality television. And like this time of year is kind of like the NFL's Bachelor, right? When you're waiting to see which teams and which coaches pick each other and end up together. But if there had been, reality TV back in your days of coaching the Cleveland Browns, so much of what I think is intriguing about both Nick and Bill is who they are off the field. And you and I were texting back and forth, and we text a lot, like in season, out of season, all the time. And you were kind of alluding to some really great memories that you had. You talked about how incredible that season was sitting between those two guys game planning, but just kind of off the field, some of your favorite moments that would have been, TV worthy.
Well, I'll just give you a couple of things on Bill, because Bill is, when you walk in the building with him, like I said, you're uncomfortable every day. Doesn't matter when it is. I'm the boss. We're going to go through this. You're accountable. You don't do it, I'll get somebody else. I mean, you're just grinding all the time. But he's a closet rocker, okay? I mean, one of the things that we did when I was with him that year is he took us all to the Pink Floyd concert, in No, it's got.
That's incredible.
He had a loge in the Cleveland Stadium. Pink Floyd came in. He had us all there for that. You'd have to check this, but I'm pretty sure. Oh, the other big story is about the third Saturday that I'm on the job in Cleveland. I'm down in the weight room on an early Saturday morning waiting for Nick to come in, and I'm gonna do this exercise stuff. And this guy's behind me, and he's on a lap machine. He's got fairly long hair, but he doesn't look like a player. He's a slight type of guy, and he turns around, he walks over to me, and he doesn't know who I am. And hi, John Bon Jovi, it was like, and he was
just in the building.
He was in the building, and they had a great relationship from the days in New Jersey when Bill was with the Giants. And Bon Jovi's one of that Jersey Mafia entertainers. And there was one day in practice, Bon Jovi's running routes with our receivers. I mean, who would have thought, and I think Bill.
Did he get out of his break halfway there?
Yeah, pretty good. No one was going to challenge him. Let's put it that way. And then, I think he traveled with the Stones for a little bit in Europe. But if you get him off the field, there is another side to him. And we used to hit the parking lot about the same time. And in those days, and that's a million years ago, that was the early days of talk radio. Mm-hmm. The sports talk radio was, one of the first was in Cleveland, but we would both listen to Howard Stern on the way in. I haven't listened to Howard Stern in 30 years, but we just both happened to be into that show in the morning. And there were times we'd get out of the car together, and he would laugh and say something to me. Did you hear what he just said? But then as soon as we walked in that door, we had no Howard Stern. And so, and Nick was a little bit different because we would have a good time socially, but like when we would go to Baton Rouge, Miss Sherry and I, he had a little Italian place, and they would have a special room that we could go back and laugh, and he wasn't a big social butterfly, but he. As he's gotten as a head coach and expanded his life, he has property on the lake in Georgia. He has a mansion down in Jupiter, Florida. So he does really enjoy life. But my experiences with him were a couple funny ones. Is that we're in the playoffs in '94. We're getting ready to play the wild card game with the New England Patriots and Bill Parcells and Drew Bledsoe, and Nick has just taken, with everyone's blessing, the head job at Michigan State. But he said, I will not leave till the playoffs are over. I'm not, I owe it to the Browns. And so we're meeting, and then, we're there late at night. I'm talking late at night. And, one night he was struggling, trying to get things organized at Michigan State when he wasn't there. And one night he comes in, and I was right from you to, he shut the door, slammed the door. Hey, these guys, I can't get it done. I can't, I can't get this guy to do this. I can't get, and I said, hey, slow down. Just send Miss Terry up there. She'll take care of the whole damn thing. And he laughed. And the funny thing, it's been published, and it was a true story because she's like a CEO. Really, she has really been behind his career. Mm-hmm. She is into the game. She's with the donors. She's in the recruiting weekends with the parents. She has been a tremendous force behind him. I always love the story that they went back to West Virginia. They're both from West Virginia, and they went back for some function, and they drive by this gas station. And apparently Terry had dated this guy that owned the gas station. So Nick says to her, see, Terry, if you would have married him, you'd have had that gas station. And Miss Terry, you got to know Miss Terry. Miss Terry says to him, no, if I married him, he'd be the head coach at Alabama. So
that's amazing.
I think some of my greatest times with Nick really were in-depth football. Because he and I now, we work 24 hours together for 1 year, and we put things together. And I those Saturday mornings that he taught me his approach to the game, I have all those handwritten notes. I've actually got to go through my garage because they really now ought to be in the College Hall of Fame. In all seriousness, they really should. I mean, everything from first step to hand placement, we became really close to that. And I'll never forget it. And you'll hear me whine about simplistic football because the guys I worked with over the years, I've had 5 gurus that I worked pro football with, and none of them were simplistic football. They were complexities, nuanced guys. And I'll never forget this. One of my jobs as secondary coach was to come up. We each would have projects per week. And one of my projects was, okay, how do we play our various coverage, adjust them versus bunches, stacks, inward motion, all the things that are, pain in the butts, really. They're problems, they're issues. And so I made the mistake. I meant to say the best way we should handle this bunch, we would either what we call a lock and level, or we would run a triangle call. We had different ways for different teams depending on our study. But instead of saying the best way, and this lingers with me forever, I said, Nick, the simplest way. I didn't get it out of my mouth. Rick, simple's not always better. Simple's not always better. And I went, no, I'll change that to the best way. And, those guys were like, no, we're not going to play, I call it 4 o'clock defenses. You play that simple. You can go home at 4 o'clock. Our thing was it's the pressure is on you as a coach to teach it. I hire you to teach nuance. And that's why that one of the reasons they're as good as they are.
Why do you think it ended the way it did for Belichick in New England?
Well, in my opinion, it just, from my observation on the outside, I think 2 things really affected him. I think he's just as good a coach. I mean, we've played him every year, and I've studied the tape. I mean, in terms of coaching schematically, I don't think he's lost a bit. I think if you had to say what has affected him, I would say the general manager, Bill Belichick, has not been good to the coach, Bill Belichick. And when you bust on your quarterback pick, you can go forever on that one. I mean, really and truly. I mean, the Niners are lucky. I mean, they really busted on their pick, and then they get Mr. Irrelevant to come in and play. And I think they busted there, but I haven't noticed the quality of personnel on that team lately. And then if he made any coaching error, it was probably putting those like a special teams guy, like the defensive guy, and making them offensive coaches.
Joe Judge and Matt Patricia.
Almost as if, hey, I can overcome all this, I'll do this. And Bill always did believe that if you were a good coach, you could coach anything. But I think that really hurt them.
Was that almost like over loyalty to his guys? Because those are 2 guys we worked with for a while, and he didn't kind of expand outside of his tree to replace Josh McDaniels as the OC.
Well, you make a really good point, and that is also a difference between Nick and Bill. Mm-hmm. Bill is very much, I guess loyalty is the word, but he really believes in promoting from within, in working guys up and through. They'll start out as, Tommy Dimitroff was cutting the grass in the afternoon and then studying tape at night. I mean, seriously. But he's been really good at that, of bringing guys in through. And it was, successful for years and years and years in not bringing in many guys from the outside. So I think you make a fair point. Where Nick, if you look at Nick, when he has turnover, it's almost always from the outside. What's the difference there? I really don't know, but it's always from the outside, and that is a difference. And that very well may have really, but that accelerated the demise. I think personnel is number one.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the Patriots, it's not a very good team talent-wise. It's just not. And when you have a quarterback that doesn't come to your expectations, that we know that's a kill shot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Rick, there was one photo that went viral kind of when it was announced that Saban was retiring and Bill was leaving the Patriots, and it's those 2 guys from the Browns when they were coaching together. They're on the sidelines, And what people don't know about that iconic photo, and I'll send it over so we can add it to the edit. So for those of you watching on YouTube, you'll see, or Google it. But you're on the other end of this headset, and this was an epic. I don't think that's overstating it.
Epic.
Tell me about that game, because I believe it was against Dallas, right? A huge win for you guys, and you said that was kind of one of those that really illustrated well what that season was for you.
There's no question about it. This turnaround season of '94. Now you got to remember, those two they were 0-3 when we went in 3 years. 0-3 years when we went into that season, and we got off and running. I mean, we were off and running. The week before, I think it was the week before, or the 2 weeks before. I think it was the week before. We had just broken Philadelphia's streak in the vet. We came in there, and they had, Randall Cunningham. They had some humongous win streak at the vet, and we came in and beat them, and people started saying, holy cow, this AFC team is pretty good. So now we go to Dallas, and we're talking about all of them. Aikman, we're talking about Michael Irvin. We're talking about Novacek, all that offensive line, that great defense. We're talking about great Dallas.
Like how many Hall of Famers?
Right. Emmett Smith.
1994, great Dallas team and talent. So we go in there, and it is tight, and we are playing our tail off on defense. And the photo that Larra's talking about, okay, I mean, it ended up being an epic win for us. I think at that point we went to like 6-1. People were calling me about home field advantage, really. But if you look at the photo carefully, there's 10 seconds on the clock. 10 seconds on the clock, and we're up by 4 or 5. But if you look down in the photo, 10 seconds to go in the fourth quarter. I'm on the phone. There's Nick and Bill together. I'm on the phone with them. Dallas has one play left from the 3-yard line. They got one play left, 3 or 4, right in there. So they got to go for it. They can't kick a field goal to win it. So they come out in a trips bunch to the right, Michael Irvin to the left. We play what we call our red 4, which had built-in double coverages. The double, of course, went to Irvin. We weren't going to let him throw the 50-50 ball to Irvin. So now we're playing what we call a tight quarters match to the bunch. They go flat in, and then Novacek from the off position runs the angle. We call it a Zampese. And what they're trying to do is rub your man, and then he's going to come in and catch it and get in. Okay? So that 10 seconds, that's it. We're discussing that call at that moment, at that second. So Aikman goes back. He sees Irwin's doubled on the left. He goes to Novacek, which is the outlet on the right. Eric Turner comes up from that safety, that tight position, tackles him on the 1 and drops him on the 1. And the Cleveland Browns beat the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. And that it means even more to me. I think it was just a picture to show those two guys had coached together. Mm-hmm. But to me, I texted Nick. I sent something to Bill, but I didn't get anything back from Bill. But I texted Nick the picture, and I said we all went on to good things, but there was three tight you know what guys right here. And Nick texts back to me, we all look better back then, I said, well, I think you win the award for still looking pretty doggone good. But no, that was it. It's really that. You go back into our annals. I just looked it up the other day. That season, that 94 that I talk about so much, as I said, we went 11-5. We beat Patriots in the wild card, and then we lost to the Steelers. Our third loss to the Steelers in the division. They were our nemesis. But in that season, we held teams. We were number 1 in defense in terms of score, which is everything. Yeah. We were number 1, and it's 12th in the history of the 16-game schedule for its lowest points. And that's a funny one because we're coming down in the last regular season game. we're like at what would we have been? We'd have been 197. We'd have been under 200, and almost no one had ever been under 200 for the season. And so we're ahead like 28-6 against the Seahawks. We're just playing it out. They're on a 2-minute drive for it's garbage. And Bill gets on the phone because he left you alone during the game. He gets on the phone with Nick and I. He goes, Nick, Rick, you do realize that we could hold this season under 200. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, wow, this isn't a nothing drive. But the worst part, they did score. They hit a fade, and they scored. But he gets that deep voice. You know that this could be. It was like it was going to be some record. But, not only was it a great year for me, but it was a great year for the Browns. They have actually. I'm not sure that they've won a playoff game since.
They
won a playoff game.
They did.
They haven't won two. I know
they won two. I'll tell you what, they haven't won two.
There.
Baker won one a couple of years ago.
He did win.
He won in the first round, and then they lost to Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean,
but that would be it.
That would be that would be it. I mean, it was
so fun.
Wow. I mean, that was just. You talk about. Yeah, like I said, I look at that picture and I still get nervous. It's like, red 4. That was our call, red 4.
Okay, so what I want to know is if you're back together, you're in your same role with Bill and Nick, and you're playing the 2024 Colts. Now we don't totally know what the roster is going to look like yet. What's your defensive game plan? What's Bill walking in and saying we are not letting this guy beat us?
Atlanta, it would be like Atlanta played us. I thought of all.
So the defensive game plan is give Pitt a concussion the week prior.
Well, even if he were there, I would say he would say, okay, we're not going to let. I'm putting Anthony back in the lineup.
This is with Anthony back in.
AR's back in the lineup. We're not going to let Taylor. We're not going to let Taylor or Richardson win this game. Understand? And I don't want to have this discussion on Sunday. So what we would do is we would probably play the bear, which the Colts have had a hard time running against, and it shuts off the zone running game. Also makes it tougher for Anthony because those edge guys don't have to close down with all those bodies underneath. I'd bring the 8th guy up into the box or spin my safeties hard in cover 4, and then I would press every guy on the field, have good calls underneath if you bunched me or things like that. I think if we were all together, because Nick was a big cover 1. Bill was much more of a zone guy. Nick was a big cover 1 press you all the time. Press. He never believed in playing off at all. And so, I think it would be very Atlanta-like. In Jacksonville, the two teams that played us strategically the best this year and to me shut us down was Jacksonville and Atlanta.
And Atlanta just hired Jacksonville just hired Atlanta's defensive coordinator.
Atlanta, But you need the right, in order to do that. I thought Atlanta had really good corners. You also have to have really good corners to do it. But I think it would be something like that. I'd have to know all the players, But I think it would be on that level. I know this. It would be Taylor and Richardson do not beat us. If it takes 9 up there, it'll be 9 up there. And we'll make all the rest of those guys win.
Just good to hear that it would be the quarterback.
Absolutely. Listen, that kid has it all. Now that kid adds the 12th man to a defensive scheme. 10 years ago, we didn't worry about that. But the evolution of the pro game and kids like Richardson, Lamar, the kid at Buffalo, Josh Allen, all these guys, Hurts, all these guys that have brought the zone read, RPO game in, they create a whole nother ball game for you. That's why one of the reasons you've seen the Bear come back, because the Bear defense, the Bear defense can take away the inside without affecting the edges. which allows the edges, in a simplistic way, allows the edges to play the quarterback. You know, and not have a safety have to come up and make the tackle. So, I mean, the bear, or what I call I-4s, is suited for – now, one thing Shane did by the end of the season, they didn't do it right away, but the last couple weeks, and it started with Pittsburgh, they got a little bit more of a blocking scheme for it. They ran more what we call whams. They ran more powers. They ran more power traps, because you can't just force that zone. When you force, that's what we did against Atlanta. You come in and try to force that zone, there's no place to run. I don't care if you have Jim Brown in there. There's just no place to run. So, yeah, I think it would have been on that. And he, you know, when you look at his team now, they play a ton of bear, even with the Patriots.
I'm glad you haven't quite escaped to Florida yet. Luke, usually this guy, end of season, he's already to warmer weather and sunshine. So I'm glad that you were stuck around a little bit longer so we could spend some time with you and get a little extra Rick time here before we head in the off season and get to see you back for the draft.
Well, you know, it's been a little bit of a decompression, you know.
Yeah.
And Miss Sherry's so tied into the grandkids and in her comfort zone there. I can't get her to move yet to Florida, but we'll probably. I've got something I've got to do next week, and then we'll be on our way. But it's really been a decompression, and I know it has for you guys. The difference are you guys that work 12 months a year, where I go from 100 miles an hour to 0. All of a sudden, I stop. I mean, it's every morning. From July 15th, for me, the way I do it, and you don't have to do it that way, I'm 4 o'clock in the morning, three and a half hours of tape, or writing off the tape, or creating blueprints and doing all that stuff. And so all of a sudden, when it's over, it's like, now what do I do? And I have been pushing the envelope for me, getting up about 5:30. I mean, that's really that's the envelope for me, because I have done that my whole coaching career. I like to get up and work when no one's around, when my mind is, after a cup of coffee, is at its clearest, and my write-ups, everything I do, I do in that time frame. And so I can't help myself, though. After about a week, I have started working on the draft. I normally don't until February 1st. I couldn't help it. I've been working all week on the draft and all last week, but no, I think we all share this, and you can say it if I'm wrong. I think we all share this. We went from low expectations in July, just enjoy the season, to high expectations in December. I mean, I think, and I felt like everything came back to us. That day we got ready to play Houston, I just said, and I looked at Jackson. I just said, we are going to win today, and we're going to play Cleveland at home next Saturday, and anything could happen. And I don't normally get that hard of mindset, but I had it. I had that hard of mindset, and I was just so distraught over the loss. It took me really, I'm back in my groove now, but it took me a while, really. And then the decompression has to set in as well, because like I said, all of a sudden, it's for me, it's 100 miles an hour to 0. Now, once I get back on the draft, then I start preparing for our April shows,
right?
And that kind of stuff. And hell, I really enjoy that, though. I would do that if I didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
I've always, you got to remember, I was a college coach first, and so I've always really loved the personnel end of it and the projection of players. Chris and I get along really well, because he remembers when I was on the road, and he was just a young guy starting out, and usually when we go to a school to work people out, I was always the guy that worked everybody out. And of course, in my day when I started with the Colts in '82, we didn't have these. I mean, you got to remember, guys, we moved to Indianapolis in Bob Irsay's plane in 3 station wagons. That was it. Now, we hired staff here, secretaries, staff people, but that was it. We had like 3 scouts, 7 coaches. We brought the comptroller along with us, and I mean, Jimmy and so forth. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. We no computers. So the reason we took the station wagon, we had all those big books. We had the same information now. It's just, except ABCs, the book was this big. We had it all on paper, but because we didn't have to hook anything up, we started at that little schoolhouse over on Kessler, over on the, would be the east side. We started the next day and went right to work like nothing happened. But also along with that, we did a lot of the scouting because Frank Kush, who came out of college, who I went to work for, he said, why would we not, as coaches, we all come from college, we're all part of the recruiting end of it. Why aren't we going to be, part of the process? And so I was involved. And then I think, and I don't want to mean this arrogantly, I think I got a really good reputation within the scouting circles because I think all those guys respected that when I went on a job, I wasn't just like a typical coach. Oh, he can play or he can't play. No, I was very analytical. I'm a money ball fanatic. I'm not. Most of my vintage are dinosaurs. I'm not. I've always been a money ball type of guy and a numbers guy. If I can find a numerical way to win analytically, I'm going to take it. Now the difference in me is analytics for me are baseline. They're what I study during the week. I created green lights. I was just talking to a guy who used to work with me. Green lights, red lights, yellow lights, meaning green light, I'm calling it here. Red light, I'm not. Caution, in the gut. But then when I got in the gut, if it's 4th and 1, I didn't rely on any analytics.
Right.
I knew that going in, and that was still the way I learned how to coach on the grass or really play on the grass. And so, but I always loved the, going out, working guys out. And Chris and I are very much alike, and we both have had successes. Mine was a while back, but we both had successes on the second and third day with our selections because I think we really look at metrics, and then you look at football intelligence. I used to argue with people. They'd say, at the end of the round, just take an athlete. I always say, no, take a sharp guy. Because in training camp, if you're a rookie and you're a non-investment player, you're not getting any reps. So you better be able to pick things up quickly. And the one thing Chris does is he puts a really high value on football intelligence. He's not going to bring in dumb guys. And I was really that way. I mean, I had some really good late-round picks over the years. And my claim to fame, of course, is Jeff Arad, who's one of the great players ever to play here, who I went down to Ole Miss, and I'll never forget this. Jack Bashofsky was the personnel director, and there was a high draft pick at Mississippi Valley where Jerry Rice came from. And I can't remember his first name, but Brown, they called him the Undertaker. He had a nickname, the Undertaker Brown, because he put him to sleep when he hit him. So, and he's at Mississippi Valley, which is down in Itta Mississippi, in the middle of nowhere. But so Jack wants me to go down and see. He was at that time projected as a late 1 or 2. So he wanted me to go down and see him. And I said, Jack, I really like this kid that played in the blue-gray game. He wasn't invited to the combine. And this Harrod kid at Ole Miss, I said, he's making all these tackles in the Southeast Conference. And Jack says, well, hey, Rick, if you like him, just take an extra couple days and go on down and, do what you got to do. Take a look. So I went down and I saw Brown, and Brown was legit. He was a legit top prospect. So then I go to Ole Miss, and in those days you didn't have these big elaborate pro days that are all scripted. You worked the kid out one-on-one. You took him out to dinner. You got him on the blackboard. If you weren't sure about his intelligence, you took tape and you went through tape with him to see if you could make the decision. Oh, let me get back to Belichick on what. I don't know if we're out of time or what, but so
it's a podcast. We can go for as long as we want.
So I go down and spend 48 hours with Jeff. I take him out to dinner. I work him out. He's about 5'11", 218, 222 maybe. He ran like a 4.75. But the more I watched him on tape and the more I was around him, I just said, brilliant football guy. This kid. So I still have my write-up. I wrote it, and I said, if we draft this kid, he will make our team. I guarantee you. Now, little did I know he would become one of the leading tacklers of all times and the best middle linebacker we had for years and years here. But, that was an example of going and seeing a guy. One thing I will say for Belichick, I mentioned the term. Now you're getting me back to my scouting days, but we all had different projects, and I use the term "no stone left unturned." Bill did something that was just tremendous, in my opinion. I'd never seen it before. I was the guy. I was what he called a special projects guy, because I was a little bit older, and I had a good reputation in the league of being a guy that could scout well, not just coach, but scout. So he would give me what he called a tweener list. I would have my position list, but then I had a tweener list. Now, what a tweener would be like you would think traditionally. He's a defensive end. Could he be an outside linebacker? He's a corner. Could he be a safety? You know, all these crossover position guys. He wanted me to go and try to make that call. Not that he wouldn't make the call in the end, but he wanted to get my input. Then he would give me, it varied, but let's say 3. He would give me 3 guys that he just loved on tape that had real low test scores. Real bad in those days, the Wonderlic. We used another one, but there was a couple tests. But this kid was great on tape. And my job was to go down and see if the Wonderlic correlated. Was it possible that he had a different kind of intelligence? You know, maybe could he play in our system? And he would say to me, take whatever you need, spend as much time as you need to. So, I mean, I'd go down and I'd, take him out to dinner. It wasn't so much of a workout with those guys. It was mental gymnastics. I'd get them on the blackboard. And, and then we'd go through tape and I'd go back and forth. And so traditionally I would come back and he would say, okay, player A. And I would say, Bill, no way he can learn our system. No way. The Wonderlic is also a football Wonderlic. The second one, I would say, Bill, if we do it this way, if we keep him in this level, if we do it in this progression, I really believe he can. So he got on our board. Okay. The third guy, I'd say, Bill, I was with him for 3 days. I can't make the call. Take him off. In other words, but I mean,
it's
that
not
was
definitive at that point.
That was the kind of sorting, and that was one of my jobs. That was just one of my jobs, and I've always gone back to that, and so it was good.
Well, this has been a really good chat. This is like Larra and I were talking about this, and it's like the chats we have on the bus going to games.
Yeah.
Of like just put it in podcast form for everyone, because these are so fascinating, and the stories that you're able to tell. I mean, we could go on, a 5-hour podcast of your experiences in football.
And that station wagon ride.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Well, that's something, a little teaser. I'm gonna want to talk to you about that one this summer. But we're gonna wrap this one up here on the official Colts podcast. We'll keep an eye out for Inside Football with Rick Venturi when that makes its return around the draft. We know you're going to be prepared because you're literally already preparing for the draft. So that's great. All right. Well, for Larra Overton and for Coach Rick Venturi, I'm JJ Stankevitz. Thank you to Sherry behind the camera on YouTube, and we will talk to you next week here on the official Colts podcast right here on the Colts Audio Network and on the Colts YouTube page. So long.